the new RBI governor, Mr. Sanjay Malhotra, has finally cut the rates in almost 5 years. So there's been a rate cut of 25 BPS points. Then now the benchmark lending rate is right now at 6.25%. Joining me is the editor-in-chief to discuss more on this. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
RBI, has finally cut rate in the last 5 years. Amid India's with India all set to project its lowest growth since the pandemic. So how do you see this? Is this some kind of good news for the banking industry now?
Yeah, banks should feel better now because more liquidity will be available. If you look at the bigger picture, the government of India and RBI are moving in tandem to make more liquidity available in the in the system. The finance minister, through her budget speech, made it very clear that by passing, she is giving a lot of benefits to the middle class by giving a huge tax cut, and that was itself an indication that RBI will have to reduce the rates. And if you notice today's newspapers and yesterday, again, everybody was speculating there will be a 25 basis point cut, and that's what RBI has exactly done. But then it hasn't actually lowered the guard because the guidance still remains kind of cautious by saying that they'll have a neutral stance.
That's right. When you talk about the neutral stance, does this mean that the rate cutting cycle is going to be really slow?
Yeah, so that's what I said, that it's very, I think it's a bit of a cautious. He hasn't, he wants to see a lot of external factors and also how domestically things improve before taking the next step. That's why this governor, who's given his first speech, has been very clinical in his approach. He has laid out a very neat, statement, the way he wants to handle the RBI policy. Now, what he seems to be suggesting that in GDP, he has given an estimate of about, I think, GDP estimate is 6.7%, which is in line with Government of India's 6.3 to 6.8% range. So he is moving in tandem with what Government of India has done, and in a way, government has nudged RBI to take this action, and they have taken this action. And what are the factors on which he is relying on? He expects that there will be a recovery in manufacturing, but he himself is cautious and says there's only a mild, corporate results show mild recovery. So he's not yet giving a green signal. It's a kind of an amber one. But he says agriculture will do well because the Rabi output is okay, and then the Kharif he expects to be better. Kharif, again, he expects a lot to happen because of that. And because of the seasonal factor, he thinks that food inflation should also come down because vegetable prices and other things should go down because of better supply. And all these factors, he's positive. But when it comes to external factor, he's extremely cautious.
But maybe that's something beyond the control of the government of India. As I guess. So I think I also want to talk a little bit about inflation. He says inflation is pegged at close to 4%, the RBI's median target within the tolerance span. But he also says that the urban consumption has been really subdued, while the rural consumption is kind of better. How do you see this?
Exactly. So again, here, if you see the entire approach of the budget has been that there will be a consumption which will pick up.
Exactly.
So he also expects that by this measure, consumption will pick up. Now, like the finance secretary has clearly said, there are three possibilities when people receive benefits of tax cut. One, they could spend. Two, they could save, or third, they could invest. So he says either of these three things happen, it will be beneficial to the economy. So what RBI governor would be looking at in a similar fashion, if there is more investment happens, banks will get more deposits, more incremental improvement will happen. So the RBI governor is again trying to say the same thing, that look, I am passing on a cut to the banks, and hopefully the banks will, pass on these benefits to the consumer, and that will happen, that will result in a revival of the consumption.
That's right.
But again, as you asked, when RBI governor is passing on, what kind of response comes from banks, and whether they actually pass on all this to the consumer, is we have to wait and see.
One last question there on that note. So, is this mean realty? It's good news for the realty market because the affordable housing sector hasn't really grown much in the last 2 years, and but we have been seeing a huge growth in the premiumization drive in the realty markets. So how do you use affordable housing is something that just for the viewers to understand how affordable housing is anything that comes below 60 lakh rupees.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So before I come to the affordable housing, let me complete one more thought.
Sure.
RBI governor also pointed out today that the urban consumption continues to be lagging. It's around 5%. There's a new study which came yesterday.
Okay.
And whereas the rural one continues to pick up. But then what has happened is, I was just listening to what the market is saying. Some of them expect that in the next coming quarter, the consumption, at least the small packages, small units, they expect will sell more.
Okay.
And therefore they expect the growth will be in double digits. Some of the companies are expecting, which is I think too much of an optimistic. But the entire dynamics will depend how much the urban consumption now picks up, because many prices are still very high. For instance, the oil prices are still very high. So the way we see the price improvement will depend on how it works. Now, RBI has said, RBI's main thing has been to keep the inflation under control. They are expecting around 4.1. But if you look at the nominal GDP projected by the government of India, you see the difference only between the inflation and the growth rate only about 3.3 to 3.4%, which means the government itself is saying that there need to be much tighter, inflation. So it's going to be a challenge for RBI that how they're going to guide that. Now, coming to the second part of your question, where you talked about whether housing sector will benefit. Yes, this is one sector which the economy would be very beneficial if it really recovers, because a lot of employment come from that sector. And that's an unorganized sector also picks up because of that. And then other sectors will cement, steel, the entire cycle starts working on that. Obviously, this will again happen when the credit is passed on. When the bank lending becomes cheaper and affordable, then only people will borrow. So again, the expectation is how much of this rate cut. It's not necessary that if there is a 25 basis point rate cut, all of that is passed on to the consumer. If that happens, it's very well. But banks normally don't do, they also hold back a bit. So one has to really see how the RBI now manages to nudge banks to start quickly passing on this. The other thing is, whenever a monetary policy is announced, the impact is not immediate. It again comes with a lag. So again, it depends on when these things actually kick in.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.